civil rights movement is being infiltrated by communists. He gives orders to tap King's phones and keep close tabs on him wherever he goes. The surveillance continues for the next 6 years. This doesn't stop King's growing influence and his massive impact on society. August 28, 1963. King directs a march in Washington, D.C., and the news coverage is seen not only in America, but across the world. Despite President John F. Kennedy's earlier opposition to the march, the crowd of 250,000 people walk on without incident. That evening, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, King delivers one of the most memorable and electrifying speeches.
You will be there 1 week from tomorrow.
That one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
King's soaring rhetoric, demanding racial justice and a unified society, becomes a mantra for the black community. His words give hope to a generation who are demanding social and political change. But there are also those who are fearful of King's success, including one man serving a prison term in Leavenworth, Kansas. James Earl Ray, a career criminal, is in and out of various prisons most of his adult life. Shortly after the end of World War II, Ray joined the Army, but his military career didn't last long. In 1948, he's court-martialed for drunkenness and discharged for being inept. And that set him on a path towards a deadly crossing with Dr. Martin Luther King. July 2nd, 1964, Washington, D.C. Martin Luther King arrives at the White House to witness an historic event. The new president, Lyndon B. Johnson, signs the groundbreaking Civil Rights Act of 1964. At a stroke, racial segregation is outlawed throughout the U.S.
This Civil Rights Act is a challenge to all of us to go to work in our communities and our states, in our homes and in our hearts, to eliminate the last vestiges of injustice in our beloved country.
Many in the South regard the act, and King's part in it, as the ultimate betrayal of a region that still resents their loss in the Civil War and the end of slavery. The Civil Rights Act makes black Americans their equals in the eyes of the law. And the one person they blame above all others is Martin Luther King. 5 months later, and aged just 35, King becomes the youngest man to ever receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Over the next 3 years, King's powerful public speeches and demonstrations galvanize support. But they also make him a target of hostility and violence from those who hate his message and the growing momentum for change. His life is in constant danger. April 23, 1967, Missouri. James Earl Ray escapes from the state penitentiary in Jefferson City after serving 7 years of a 20-year sentence for robbing a grocery store. For the next year, Ray travels from one city to another, including spending time in Canada. Little is known of his activities before he finally arrives in Memphis, Tennessee. April 4, 1968. James Earl Ray, giving his name as John Willard, checks into a boarding house on South Main Street. The Lorraine Motel, early evening. Martin Luther King is standing alone on the balcony of his room while his friends are inside. He has no idea he is being observed by a man intent on killing him. Suddenly, a single shot rings out and King collapses.
Whoever was shooting.
The Reverend Samuel Kiles recalls the event.
And when I looked around, all I could see was the lower half of Dr. King's body, because it threw him back into this, beyond this point. And when I looked, I just saw his leg, his foot was on the rail. And he was lying in this position. And I distinctly remember looking at him. I don't think I touched him. I looked at him. And I remember, it's sort of like you get a complete look in one moment. And I remember the necktie, the knot of his tie had been severed, just cut, and was laying open. And there was a tremendous wound right here, where the bullet went in.
St. Joseph's Hospital within 15 minutes of the shooting, and a team of medics get to work on him, but there's nothing they can do. At 7:05 Central Standard Time, Martin Luther King is pronounced dead. The news of his death sparks explosive riots in the urban ghettos across the country. Soon, 40 U.S. cities are engulfed in violence, looting, and lawlessness, fueled by anger and despair. As the night wears on, 4,000 members of the National Guard are drafted into Memphis to back up police. And a dusk to dawn curfew is ordered in an attempt to ward off further disturbances. April 5th, Washington, D.C. President Lyndon B. Johnson makes a plea for calm.
I ask every citizen to reject the blind violence that has struck Dr. King.
As cities burn and the riots and rage show no signs of subsiding, it's obvious that the assassin must be caught quickly. Police launch one of the greatest manhunts in U.S. history. A $100,000 reward is posted for the capture and conviction of King's assassin, but he's nowhere to be found.
Ask me what it's like to get your best night's...
April 4th, 1968. Violence spreads throughout America with the news of Martin Luther King's assassination. Police swarm all over the Lorraine Motel and the surrounding area. King is killed by a .30-06 bullet fired from a Remington 760 Game Master rifle. The killer fired from the bathroom of a flophouse across the way. The window is jammed open, and there are footprints in the bath. A woman reports that she'd seen a man running from the boarding house shortly after 6 p.m. He discards a bulky package in a nearby shop doorway, jumps into a white Mustang, and speeds off. The package contains a number of items, including 2 cans of beer, a pair of binoculars, ammunition, various tools, including a hammer, a portable radio, and a Remington 760 Game Master rifle, fitted with a telescopic sight. The rifle is traced to a gun shop in Birmingham, Alabama, where records show its purchase 6 days earlier by a man calling himself Harvey Lohmeyer. However, fingerprints on the gun belong to a 40-year-old escaped convict, James Earl Ray, now America's most wanted man. Ray drives to Atlanta, where he abandons his car. From there, he makes his way to Toronto, Canada. April 8, 1968, Memphis. Mourners pay tribute to Martin Luther King. Under strict security, his body is then flown to his hometown, Atlanta. At King's funeral, mourners remember his pragmatic views on assassination.
I'm realistic enough to know that I can meet a violent end. I live every day under the threat of death. And I have no illusions about it. There are enough sick people in the world for me to come to a violent end, just as other leaders have come to a violent end. But I don't have any fear about it. You can't function if you just go around day in and day out fearing death.
May 7, 1968, Heathrow Airport, London. James Earl Ray arrives from Toronto. Later the same day, he flies to Lisbon, Portugal. 10 days later, Ray returns to London and rents a room in a seedy area near the city center. June 8, 1968, Heathrow Airport, London. Once again, Ray is on the move. But as he checks in for a flight to Belgium, an official recognizes him. Police swoop in and put him under arrest, charging him with carrying a false passport and a firearm without a permit. Ray is extradited to the U.S. The manhunt for Martin Luther King's assassin is over. Americans now demand answers. March 10th, 1969, Memphis. Almost 1 year after Martin Luther King's assassination, James Earl Ray is on trial. In order to avoid a possible death sentence, Ray admits killing King and also claims that no one else was involved. He's sentenced to 99 years in prison. He's defended by Texas lawyer Percy Foreman.
I didn't persuade James Earl Ray to plead guilty. James Earl Ray wanted to live in preference to death, and he thought he would be executed. And if he were executed, he couldn't escape. But if he went to the penitentiary, he felt that he could escape.
Just 3 days after sentencing, Ray retracts his admission of guilt. Now he claims he's innocent and demands a new trial. It's denied. There, the case rests until 9 years later, when, in August 1978, Ray appears before the U.S. House Select Committee on Assassinations. In protesting his innocence, he claims he'd been set up by a Mexican gun-running gang and that he'd been nowhere near the scene of the crime. Instead, he says he was downtown at a Memphis garage getting a tire fixed. He then says he panicked at the police activity and took off. He knew that if he was questioned, there was a strong chance his true identity as an escaped convict would be revealed. The committee isn't convinced, but its members are inclined to agree he didn't act alone. Many believe he'd been put up to the assassination by a group of extremists who wanted King dead. Adding fuel to the conspiracy theory, the committee's files on the killing are sealed until 2029. Years after his death, King's widow, Coretta, continues to push for answers.
I want to make it clear that I am not interested in any form of retribution or punishment of anyone. I just want to get the truth.
And there have always been lurking rumors of a government cover-up. As another civil rights leader, the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, recalled before his death in 1970, the theories reach all the way to the FBI.
I think he was gotten rid of by a conspiracy. The evil forces of this nation in high places, the FBI under Hoover, and who hated Dr. King, and these forces decided that Dr. King had gone too far because he was organizing the Poor People's Campaign. He was bringing black and whites, brown, red, and yellow people all together. And that was too powerful for the American scene to endure.
And according to author and historian Christopher Andrew, the conspiracy perhaps even reaches America's Cold War enemies, the Russians.
What they wanted was race war in the United States. So in the mid-1960s, they start developing this whole series of active measures to discredit Martin Luther King. That's quite a sophisticated thing. What they're going to do is plant stories in the African press, which dismiss Martin Luther King as an Uncle Tom, and which produce bogus evidence that he's actually in the pay of President Lyndon Baines Johnson. What changes their mind, of course, is that to their immense relief, Martin Luther King is assassinated in 1968, greeted with whoops of joy in the center, because the one man who could prevent the long, hot summers becoming longer and hotter is out of the way. So now he becomes a martyr to sinister right-wing racist conspiracies.
April 23rd, 1998, Brushy Mountain Penitentiary, Tennessee. James Earl Ray dies from liver disease, age 70. He maintains his innocence of King's assassination until the very end. 4 months later, as the high-level cover-up rumors live on, the U.S. Justice Department opens a review of the case. In June 2000, after examining all the available evidence, the U.S. Justice Department concludes that there was no conspiracy case to answer. Their evidence proves Ray acted alone, that there was never any question of him having been framed. However, as the report concludes, questions and speculation may always surround the assassination of Dr. King and other national tragedies. The whole truth behind Dr. King's death and Ray's part in it will probably never be revealed. There is no doubt that while he was alive, Martin Luther King inspired a generation of Americans and died in an infamous assassination that is still troubling today.
Okay, a couple things I want to kind of emphasize to you. Conspiracy is a funny thing. There's two types of conspiracy. One can be, as we often hear in the John Kennedy assassination conspiracy, that Oswald didn't do it. He was set up or whatever. Another type of conspiracy is that James Earl Ray did it without any question, but someone had him do it. So like the FBI, etc. In the case of Lee Harvey Oswald, not much question in my mind that he did it, and I told you the reasons why I think he did. Martin Luther King Jr., I don't know. Does one man have enough hatred of black people to kill one civil rights leader? I don't know. It is true that J. Edgar Hoover hated Martin Luther King Jr. He wiretapped him all the time, caught him in compromising positions because he was a bit of a womanizer as well. And J. Edgar Hoover had a lot of that on tape and was prepared to hold that against Martin Luther King Jr. And so there's a lot of controversy, but there's different types of conspiracies. Did the person do it and why, or did the person do it because someone wanted to do it? I don't know if we'll ever know that, but it was a sad time in American history. Second thing, did you notice anything weird about Lyndon Johnson when he was signing the Civil Rights Bill of 1964? Yeah, he was very famous in signing part of his name, then giving a pin to someone that was witnessing. Then he'd take out another pin, and he did that a lot. So a lot of people were given pins. I actually have a pin at home of when he signed the HUD bill, a revision to the HUD bill, the Housing and Urban Development Act. He did a revision, and I have one of the pins that he used to sign that I had gotten over my travels. But he was very famous for doing that, right? Writing part of it and then giving pins out. So anyway, that's the story behind that. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to talk about the assassination of Robert Kennedy